Hello and welcome. We're going to start in one more minute. Hello and welcome to the Jabmo webinar, Why Personal Isn't Enough. How personal and relevant are driving today's renaissance in B2B marketing. My name is Meredith Bell. I'm the VP of Worldwide Sales and Marketing. With me is Rich Flady, our Chief Product Officer. Today we're talking about a very specific piece of the Jabmo ABM solution. And the point of this webinar is not to describe our approach to ABM in general, as much as to talk about how we enable personal and relevant in our ABM programs. Jabmo it focuses on manufacturers, and manufacturers are in the midst of a giant transformation. The vast majority of manufacturers, companies that build or create things, are moving from being product oriented towards solution oriented. And this means in many ways that our clients are working to avoid commoditization. And one way we talk about what they're trying to do is get known for new things. Go ahead to the next slide, Daniela. B2B buying in B2B has changed more in the last 5 years than 100 years before that. One way we like to talk about this change is by showing some data from Gartner. I'm going to go through just 2 slides, and then I'll turn it over to Rich to talk about personal and relevant. But just to show you what problems specifically we're solving for, the complexities of selling today and the length of sales cycles has increased dramatically from 5 or especially 10 or 15 years ago. Gartner did this one study that we cite a lot, where Gartner asked their biggest customers what was the average length of their sales cycle, and they responded 7.4 months. How many people involved? An average of 10 people. Then Gartner went and asked the buyers in those same exact cycles. So the buying organizations, how long was your evaluation? And their answer was 16.7 months. And how many people were involved? And their answer was an average of 30 people. So if you look at this visual here, that known buying committee, that is the, quote, sales cycle as it was known to the selling organizations. The gray is all of the part that the selling organizations had no idea was even occurring. That piece of anonymous research up there, 9.3 months, that's probably a lot longer. And this research is actually from 3 or 4 years ago. And we know that small red triangle is only getting smaller, and the gray part of the triangle is getting bigger. So what we're going to talk about today is how our clients use ABM to communicate with those anonymous buyers early on in the cycle. Talk to them earlier. How do they talk to them more often? And how do they talk to more people in each cycle? And how do you do that in a very personal and relevant way? We know, some research from Forrester says that buyers prefer 3 to 1 not to talk to salespeople, especially in that early part of the sales cycle. So how to reach them earlier, reach them more often, and touch them in ways that your competition can't and your competition isn't. That's what we're going to talk about today. So with me is Rich Flady. Rich is Jabmo's Chief Product Officer. And Rich is going to talk about, again, it's a specific piece of our program. It's how we talk to smaller audiences with very personal and relevant information. Rich?
Thank you, Meredith. So I wanted to start off describing and illustrating how we go about being both personal and relevant. And I stress both of those things, and we'll actually make a distinction between those two things. The first step that we take with all of our manufacturing customers is to take them through an exercise. That exercise is what we call precision audience segmentation. The outcome of precision audience segmentation is driving engagement in these key target accounts that our manufacturing clients have. The first step is to work collaboratively with our clients and ask them, what are they trying to achieve? What strategies are they trying to achieve? Interestingly enough, one of the top things that manufacturers try to do, as Meredith said, is get known for new things. In many cases, they already know who their customer base is. Their customers actually already know who they are. But what they're trying to do is really educate them on new products, new services, new ways that an existing manufacturer and customer relationship can improve because of innovation. So those strategies is really a very key thing. So we ask, is it specifically around potentially upselling an existing customer to a new product line, expanding and increasing wallet share within that customer, cross-selling products, getting into an adjacent division, or expanding into new geographies within that existing customer. Those are very, very common strategic objectives. The next piece is we ask, who do you want to reach? This is an important exercise. There's a process that we use for defining audiences. We'll go into that in just a few minutes. And then the final piece, which is often one of the most interesting aspects, is what content, what messages, what do you have to reach those audiences with currently? It's surprisingly, content is one of those things that I think leads to a lot of hand-wringing around we don't have enough content, and we can talk about how we can improve that over time. But content is, of course, very important. There's ways to reshape that content and to make it specifically oriented to specific audiences, taking the content and adjusting it as necessary. These three then lead to the buyer's journey. What do we want the audience to see, and what do we want to achieve? And when you take into account those three things, then the output of this process is engagement. It's what the ABM initiative, the project, the actual work leads to. And of course, this is based upon performance over time. Typically, 6 months to a year, we go back and are able to measure engagement and show the benefits of reaching that audience with these key messages. So we want to talk about relevance first. I'll give you a moment to read the textbook definition of relevance. I think when we talk with many customers, our clients, they say we want to be personal. We want to be personal, and I always correct them and I say, no, actually, you want to be relevant. In order to be relevant, you have to take into consideration the person. But being personal and talking to someone in a personal manner doesn't actually mean you're going to be relevant. You can talk to them about something that doesn't matter to them. So it's this concept of relevance is critical. It's not always easy to know right away what is actually going on in the mind of that prospective customer. As Meredith said, they're not willing to share all their information and their engagement in ways that they had historically. They try to do this silently. They try to gather information. We have some testing techniques, A/B testing techniques to really refine what is relevant. But it is, in fact, relevance that is the single most important aspect of your ABM initiative. It is relevance that really drives engagement. If you talk to somebody, if you speak to an account about something that matters to them, whether that's pain that they're currently having, or in many cases, describing a symptom in their business that they're not actually able to put their finger on the cause, and then subsequently showing that you have a solution to that problem, that sort of latent pain, is a very, very important concept. That's what drives that engagement. That's what that leads to incremental revenue and winning deals and moving deals through the pipeline faster. So we're going to talk about relevance, and relevance is the key aspect. In order to be relevant, you need to break down your overall potential customer base or your existing customer base, Daniela, into segments, because there are pockets or segments of your business that have different messages, different challenges in their business. So the process of segmentation, it's a data exercise that we go through with our customers. It's basically dividing all of your potential target accounts up into smaller, heterogeneous populations. The key thing that we're looking for here is that each of these populations that we break the overall audience up into shares traits. Basically, a message will be relevant for everyone within that segment. Okay, so if they share traits and respond similarly to marketing strategies, because that's what we're going to be doing. Is we're going to be trying to reach and educating each of those segments with a relevant message, and we want to make sure that those customers are all going to respond in a similar manner. Okay, so I think this visualization is the way that we begin working with our clients. Most marketers know, I would say all marketers know, to talk about segmentation. What I think is perhaps not fully understood is the degree to which, in today's noisy environment, you have to be super precise and super relevant. The way that I like to talk about this is that if I go in and work with a manufacturing client, they'll typically say, I have all my potential accounts and I only want to concentrate on a specific set of target accounts. And I may take those target accounts and I may break them up into tiers. In this example, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. That might be based upon the size, the commercial opportunity, what we perceive to be the potential likelihood of them buying within some time period. In many ways, it describes how much are you willing to invest of your finite resources in reaching certain accounts. The next piece is, and invariably they'll say, and we know that our clients are in different industries. And they'll say, that's our segmentation. That's what we have to work with, and we think that's fine. As we go through this process, what we will do is we will say, what about sub-industries? If you just talk about process manufacturing, there's so many different types of process manufacturing. If you talk about discrete manufacturers, there's so many different types. If you talk about transportation, there's many different sub-industries within transportation. And it's really when you get down to that lower level that the relevance goes up. Each one of those sub-industries has a very different challenge in their business. If you layer in geography, if you layer in customer size, account size, this is where things become more and more and more granular. The difference between being an industry, which is what we would call the fourth level of segmentation, and those fine little slivers down there at the bottom, in terms of engagement, we see about 5 to 7 times higher engagement when we're able to reach accounts and segments down at the bottom there with a very, very precise message. Okay. Now, 5 to 7x increase in engagement, because now we're talking to a very, obviously a much smaller audience. We're talking to them specifically about problems that they're having in their industry. And that's, again, more likely, it's going to be more relevant, and it's more likely to drive that engagement. So we like to say, if an account is worth reaching, it's going to take a pretty fine granular segmentation. The challenge, of course, is that you're not going to be able to do that fine granular segmentation for all of your accounts. It's a lot of work. We recognize that. You may not have all the content available to do that. There's a process there which we then begin to group similar segments up and potentially try to form audiences around these things, meaning that we're not going to be able to reach them all the way down to the 7th level, but we're going to at least realize that certain accounts are going to be grouped into audiences together. The way that we do this process is by forming these precision audience segments, is by looking at attributes of the buyer. Obviously, firmographic attributes are key. In a lot of cases, these are existing customers. So, our manufacturing clients will say, yeah, we know a lot about them because they're currently buying from us. We know a lot about them because they bought from us for the past 20 years. And so there's actually a very rich set of firmographic data in many cases that's available just by looking at how you're currently working with that customer. Now, that doesn't mean that they necessarily know about your new products and services, and that's, again, very often what we want to reach them with. We would talk about the solution attributes. What are you trying to sell them? What are you trying to educate them about? Focusing on, how complex is this solution? If it's more complex, that's going to lead to a more educational ABM initiative. You have to talk about the problems, and then you have to lead them to the solution. If it's a very unique solution, that's a blessing, but it also, again, leads to potentially more education. Competitive positioning may drive the messaging that you use, and potentially using comparisons to what they might be currently using versus what you'd like to use in the future. Cost, et cetera. These are all factors that we might want to pull out of the solution. And then the seller objectives. So again, is this a land and expand? Meaning, is it a greenfield opportunity? Is it a cross-sell, upsell? In many cases, this is a renewal. So maybe there's an existing relationship. The current customer is simply going back through a sourcing process, determining if they should continue to purchase from the existing supplier. And it's very important to think about that as a potential audience that you want to reach within your ABM initiative. The result of this is many, many, many audiences, but a specific single audience will be defined by a series of attribute values. So in this example, one example audience, there might be literally, there might be quite a few of these, is a strategic customer. You're trying to renew the existing opportunity. You might also be trying to cross-sell some products for a specific product line, and you know that this is a highly competitive sales cycle. That would define an audience. The result of that audience then would lead to a campaign strategy. Okay. Next slide. There you go. So the campaign strategy would be taking that audience and saying that over the course of quarters and months, we want to educate that existing customer, you're already doing business with them, about why they should continue to do business with you and potentially buy some cross-sell products. So expand your relationship there. And that takes the form of a sequence of advertisements that starts them off at the beginning about why the existing relationship is good and leads them to why they should renew that business and why they should potentially look at additional products and services from you as well. Along the way, you may be layering in some competitive positioning, but this would typically take the form of a series of ads, typically refreshed on probably a twice a quarter basis, where you begin to and continue to educate them on an ongoing basis about why they should purchase from you.
Rich, we have a number of questions.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I thought you finished. Go ahead and finish, and then I'll ask a couple questions.
Nope, that's fine.
Okay. The first one is about segmentation. Can you give examples of different strategies and how you use different strategies for different segments? I think, well, you can go ahead and interpret that yourself.
Different strategies for different segments. Sure. I think the way that we approach this is that the strategies that we would be using is what type of content we would want them to lead them to a potential segment to. What do we want that content to have? What sort of effect do we want them to have on that segment? So, as I said, if you're trying to sell them a new product or service, and you're already doing business with them, it may actually be a very important way to say place to start is to start telling them about what you're doing for them currently, and then use that as the basis for drawing a comparison about what you could do for them in the future. Why this product is as good as your product you're currently selling them are, this product is better. But you would do that over a series of sequences in a campaign. The difference there would be, say, to a greenfield opportunity where that target account is not currently doing any business with you. There you may have to really educate them about who you are, what advantages you have. Some people will call that brand awareness. I think it's a little bit different than just brand awareness. It is more educational in nature, but it's starting off almost at an earlier point where they really have to you really have to earn your stripes and explain to them why they should pay attention to you.
Next question we have about a little bit of an overlap, so I'm combining 3 or actually 4 different questions into one, but it's about Jabmo's focus on manufacturing. And in short, these audience members are asking, what's different about ABM in manufacturing? In short, the answer is complexity. So manufacturers have very complex matrix go-to-marketing models, OEM, direct, channel, e-commerce, and then there's always this extended influencer committee. If it's, say, building products, you might have architects and designers and engineers and specifiers and regulators, end users, and these can be very long sales cycles. So managing that complexity is difficult. It requires sequencing messaging, going back to the previous question, aligning different strategies to different objectives for different markets and different divisions. Another thing that seems to be important is really using an insight-led messaging model. Manufacturers, as I mentioned in the intro, are going through a big transformation. A lot of you are doing Industry 4.0 and talking about interoperability, IIoT, or AI, and these sorts of massively complex solution-based marketing / sales messaging approaches to big audiences is a very, very different problem to be solved. Going back, if you think back into that original triangle that we were looking at, there are a lot of people in that triangle, and there are a lot of different things that need to be said, and all of this does rely on this personal and relevant approach that Rich has been talking about today. And manufacturers are, you're global, your buyers are global, and so reaching those global buyers in different countries with different languages requires the ability to message to them with understanding local markets, respecting GDPR compliance, different languages. And this really often does require a lot more deeper and broader service offerings. So if I can sort of a quick commercial on Jabmo. You're global, your buyers are global, Jabmo is global. You're focused on often a lot of you are selling to other manufacturers, and just like you, and needing an ability to reach and a message to those manufacturers is quite different from, say, messaging to a bank or something like that. So it's that complexity. It's the opacity. A lot of these reaching these buyers, they are anonymous. So being able to reach through to opaque buying organizations and still reach everybody, but doing it in a personal, relevant way is massively complex. And that is why we focus only on manufacturing, because you are unique, you are different, you're complex, it's hard, you're matrixed, you have a lot of stakeholders, and on top of that, you're changing, you're evolving, you need to reach people you haven't talked to before, and oftentimes don't know how to reach and don't know how to find. Let's just do one last question. How much of your solution is a software product and how much of your solution is services? Well, it's really about providing the whole solution. We are a SaaS company. We're a software as a service company, but we have found, specifically because we work with manufacturers, that very few manufacturers say they have too big of a marketing budget, that they have too many people and have too many resources that they don't know how to deploy. Really what people say is we are resource constrained. We want to reach more buyers. We want to reach them earlier in the sales cycle. We know we need to do this to be competitive. We're not doing it today because we don't have the resources for it. And so that's why we have augmented our standalone software solution with services and customer success team, an ad operations team, and strategic consulting that are designed to facilitate an implementation of an ABM model. Thank you, everybody, for viewing today. We appreciate it, and we will make this webinar available for watching offline within a couple of days. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.